Welcome back to Small Caps, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kerry Stevenson, and today I'm speaking with Archer Materials. ASX code is AXE, AXE. I want you to sit up and take notice because I'm speaking with Dr. Mohammad Choucair. He's the CEO, and this is a really interesting part. So I really need you to focus, guys, because this is all about quantum processing and I guess the next level of technology. And it's fascinating what Archer are doing. So this is going to be next level, but Mohammad actually has a really strong background in this area, and we're going to talk about that as well, where Archer are going and what is their USP going forward. So it's a pretty exciting time. As I said, the ASX code is AXE. Dr. Mohammad Choucair, thank you so much for joining me on Small Caps today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Now, first time you and I have spoken, so for our beautiful audience out there, can you just give us a brief overview on who Archer Materials are, and then we'll go into sort of a bit more of the detail?
Yeah, of course. We are a growing early stage semiconductor company that is developing advanced semiconductor devices that are relevant to quantum computing and medical diagnostics. That's us.
Quantum computing and medical diagnostics. What got you into this? Give me a little bit about your background, Mohammad, because this is is this a specialized field? Because we often hear about, the chip industry and I guess all these technology going into our mobile phones and our computers, and the fact that you and I are chatting right now. But I guess it's changing. What's your background? How did you get into getting involved with Archer Materials?
Yeah, my background, where do I start? I have a deep technical expertise, I guess you mentioned, and that's in nanoscience and technology, especially around advanced materials. I did complete a kind of undergraduate degrees here in Sydney at UNSW in nanotechnology, finished with an Honours 1, went on to do a PhD on scholarship and also a degree that was run by the School of Business at UNSW at the same time on scholarship as well. So I've always had a fascination with both the economic side and the economic potential of technology, and also the technological development itself for use by our society, for the good. And I also went on and did kind of postdoctoral research in subatomic particle physics. I was the first person in the world to make graphene by chemical means. So I guess that was my claim to fame when I was a 23-year-old kid. So
could you just say that again? So you were 23 years old.
I think I can't remember. Probably back
early 20s, and
so it was early 20s. Yeah, early 20s, and first person to make graphene chemically in bulk scale. It was a paradigm shift at the time. I think there was probably only 2 or 3 publications at the time. One of them was from the then who went on to receive the Nobel Prize. I didn't receive the Nobel Prize, but I did get recognised nationally with the Sir John Cornforth Medal by the Royal Australian Chemical Institute for the most astounding PhD in chemistry in Australia, which was very nice. And so, yeah, deep technical expertise in atom-thin materials, in nanoscale devices, in developing cutting-edge technology, really being at the forefront of what technology has to offer over the next 5 to 10 years. So went on to serve a 2-year mandate at the World Economic Forum on the Global Council for Advanced Materials. That was really exciting and really eye-opening, especially to consider global issues and kind of formulating and setting, global strategy, at the World Economic Forum, which was wonderful. And I was a research fellow at the University of Sydney for a few years. And that was absolutely wonderful, which led to some of the technology that we work on at Archer. So yeah, many years of R&D has gone into, for example, our quantum processor development. And it's, I'm happy to say that, we are building it, we are developing it, and it's not pie in the sky. It is backed up with years of R&D, and yes, we are working to develop this really exciting technology.
Why is this technology? And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, just quietly, it's not a bad CV to have as somebody that's leading a company which is very much about quantum technology. But why is this, I guess, the next phase that we're going to? Why is quantum technology so important to our future and what you're doing? Just give me a flavor of what's going on there.
Yeah, look, quantum computing, if you do have a look at the Australian government's kind of critical technologies, if you have been listening to our chief scientist, Dr. Kathy Foley, you'll see that quantum computing, quantum technology in general, is popping up in conversation a lot, and really is aligned with Australia's national strategy around critical technologies. Quantum technologies are listed as one of the 23 critical technologies that have been identified by the Australian government. Not just by Australia, but there's been a firm commitment by the largest economies in the world that quantum computing is going to happen. Talking about the US, China, Europe, all actively pursuing quantum computing. In the US, quantum computing signed into law under former President Donald Trump. So we're seeing real commitment from governments around the world because, look, to be frank, quantum computing and quantum technologies, but I will focus on quantum computing, have the potential to provide governments with a competitive advantage, nations with a competitive advantage. I mean, before we start thinking about kind of general use or general purpose applications or end use cases of quantum computing, but it really goes down to the promise that quantum computing offers and the potential for quantum computing to impact almost every sector that's dependent on computational power and that increase in computational power.
Why is it so important? I'm just trying to get it in my head. I'm not a technical person as you are. You live and breathe this every single day. I said at the beginning, we're talking over Zoom. We've got my computer, my mobile phone, and we rely more and more on, I guess, electronics in our day-to-day lives. Why is this next stage so important? Is it because it's got a lower power consumption? Is it because it's faster? Like, just for a novice out there, for my beautiful investors out there, why is this so important?
Yeah, so we want to stay away from those, bigger, stronger, faster, lighter, kind of cheaper, all these kinds of superlatives, right? So because this really, quantum computing really does represent a paradigm shift in computing, right? It holds the potential to do things that you simply cannot do with your modern day computer. There are simply things that you can do with your computer today that you couldn't do with a calculator 50 years ago. Yeah. You can still use a computer as a calculator, don't get me wrong, right? But what we're seeing and what we know, and if you ask some of our team members here at Archer, they'll tell you Moore's law's dead, right? And we've reached the limits of classical computing architecture, classical computing. Quantum computing is an entirely different technology to your modern day computers, right? And so we need to treat it as such. It comes with its own challenges. It comes with its own opportunities. It comes with its own end use cases. It comes with its own applications. And so right now we have, what we're seeing is this ecosystem globally. And I'm very proud that Archer is part of the global IBM quantum network. And we are privy to a lot of this kind of foresight into where quantum computing could end up. What we know today is that there are distinct use cases where quantum computing could provide benefits and advantages over your modern day computing. I mean, that could be in drug design, it could be in materials design, it could be in machine learning and AI, cryptography, autonomous vehicles, and autonomous systems, really towards truly autonomous systems. And so the broad nature and the promise of quantum computing is really exciting. And you go beyond what is capable with classical computing. We're not saying that quantum computing is going to completely displace classical computing. That's not what we're saying. In fact, you always need a classical computer to run some sort of quantum computation, right? So there will always be this kind of hybrid or this synergy between the two, right? And so it really does allow for this next stage and this next, I guess, era in computing,
So with Archer, you're listed on the ASX. Are other companies doing what you're doing? Is this proprietary? Have you got a patent around it? What's the, I guess it's a bit of a cliche, but what's the USP with Archer Materials? I'm trying to get my head right. Is it easy to get into, or is this quite challenging?
This is not a fast follower field. Yeah, and you would have heard me say before, you don't just put your slippers on in the morning and say you're going to build a quantum computing chip or a quantum processor, right? It doesn't work that way. Technologically at Archer, we do have a unique value proposition and one that holds up as a world first. And it's that the qubit processor that we're developing could allow for quantum computation at room temperature and onboard modern devices. It's important to take those two together, right? Because for quantum computing, this is an astounding proposition and really a really important distinction to make. You asked, do we have patents? Patents have been granted for the technology that underpins the quantum processor we're building. We are one of very few companies in the world that is building a quantum and developing a quantum processor. This is hard. It is challenging, but we're doing it. And the patents have now been granted in the US, China, Japan, South Korea, Europe, and over a dozen jurisdictions across Europe, including the largest economies like France, Germany, and the UK. So yes, well and truly, we have, a lot of R&D to back up our work. We have the patents there to back up the work, and obviously we. You said to me, I'm privy to, yes, obviously we have the brains here at Archer, and I can talk to you more about the brains at Archer that we have to get this job done.
Well, talk to me about the people around you, because, you gave us a flavour of your background, which quite frankly is astounding. I don't know when you had time to have a life. It sounded like you were really deeply involved in technology. Who else is within the Archer team that you've brought in? Because this is complex computing that you're going through, sort of next level.
Yeah, I think that's really important to talk about the people who are leading our development at Archer, because as you said, it is complex. It is, there are challenges. We are doing things that no one else in the world has done. And so you do require that, deep level of expertise. We have people, we've recently gone on a hiring drive and a recruitment drive for strategic hires. We have people like Dr. Martin Fuchsler, who's been at Archer for a number of years now. Martin, he was the first to build the single atom transistor. He got to the limits of Moore's law. This is why we can say those things, right? About step change in computing, revolution. Yeah, we use those kinds of words because you have people like Martin who 10 years ago, he built the single atom transistor. He did that while he was at UNSW working for the former Australian of the Year, Michelle Simmons, right? So, wonderful mentorship for Martin to have, and absolutely, amazing research that he's completed. And again, he was internationally recognised, receiving the Bragg Australian Institute of Physics Bragg Gold Medal for the most outstanding PhD in physics in Australia. So there you go. You have Mohammad, who has the medal for the most outstanding PhD in chemistry, and Martin for the most outstanding PhD in physics. And it's funny because Martin was in the building opposite me in physics, and I was in chemistry. And I never met him until he came to Archer.
Wow, so that's extraordinary.
It's just fate will have its way. Then we also have people like Associate Professor Matthew Broom, who's recently joined us from Warwick University. He's come over from the UK. So Matt was the first person to build and develop the 2 qubits in a silicon system, in a phosphorus silicon. He's been building quantum computers over the last decade as well. And some of his early work on quantum advantage was absolutely pioneering. And he was in Europe on a Curie fellowship. So these names, Cornforth, Bragg, Curie, all former Nobel laureates. Absolutely wonderful to have this type of talent at Archer leading the way and developing this very exciting technology.
You talked about the technology, and I said, I think earlier, it's a chip technology, not Dorito chips, ladies and gentlemen. I've been listening and I've been reading that there's a supply chain issue because we use chips in everything, don't we? Including eating them, but also, they're in everything. I got a little chip in my mobile phone here. They're in everything. What makes yours different? Is it I guess, is it like the old chips, or are we talking different? Explain to me what's the US, like, why is this so significant and why is it going to change, I guess, globally, everybody's technology?
Yeah. I think you've raised a few topics there. I think the first one is around the actual semiconductor industry, and let's not forget, it's the second largest behind the financials sector and industry in the world, right? So you're talking about $1 trillion industry, and like you said, that is, we can't live without our phones. I mean, it's permeated our society to a point where almost everything has semiconductor device in it, and so I just want to differentiate here. So before I go on, there really is a need to differentiate Archer Materials from other groups in the semiconductor sector.
Okay.
And, I mean, I could say really to a point, the only similarity between Archer and others in this really important sector, I think, is the word semiconductor, right? I mean, other than that, I think we're in completely different arenas. So in saying that, when we say chip, you have the word computing. What may come to mind is a computer, right? You say the word chip. I guess chips come in different forms. We can say words like devices. Again, devices, you may think your phone, but depending on who you talk to in the semiconductor industry, devices may mean something like this, right? Mean something like that.
What's that? What's that?
Well, I mean, I'll get to it, right? But okay. I want to answer your question first about the supply chain. I mean, you see how important semiconductors are in the world, right? We, at this stage of our development, we don't feel that impact necessarily, right? We have access to over $150 million purpose-built facility here in Sydney. Absolutely wonderful facility. A semiconductor research and prototyping foundry. Some of our shareholders have been fortunate enough to come here and to see it and to go on a tour and to see really how amazing and how cutting edge these facilities are that we operate from, and the instruments and the millions of dollars worth of instruments that we handle and access and operate on a daily basis to develop our chips, right, and our technology. And so, that's just one node in Australia that we have access to, that we use and utilize to develop our technologies. We also work with partners overseas in Switzerland and in other countries. So in order to understand where we lie in the semiconductor chain, we are, for those who are astute to and who are informed in the industry, we're a fabulous semiconductor company that focuses on design and the research and development of these advanced devices, these chips, right? So with quantum computing, it is a completely different technology to your modern day, what I'll call Boolean or classical based chips based on transistors and capacitors and what have you, right? Transistors, memories, you have GPUs and CPUs and all these jargon that people use, right? So, this technology that's built off 60 years, 6 decades, trillions of dollars, millions of people, right? So it is different. Therefore, the challenges that come with building quantum computing processors or technologies and devices and chips, right? We have to know that not all quantum computing processing is done necessarily with, how can I say this? It is deeply complex. I think we start to delve into the realm of quantum mechanics, right? So I'll just keep it at the simplest point, where the architectures that we use in our phones are all around silicon, right? Quantum computing doesn't necessarily need silicon to operate, right? So the architectures that are being developed, the materials that are the basis of this technology, there is no one silver bullet. There is no one uniform solution.
Spoke about the people, you spoke about, I guess, the brain power that's within Archer Materials. And for me, I'm looking at it from, I guess, our community point of view, saying, well, what are they up to? There's some big companies out there. Would you say that you're just starting out? You said that there's been a lot of research done, but where to now? How well funded are you?
Okay, so I think our growth right now is not really a result of overnight success. It really is a result, like you said, I think it's the quality of work that we're doing, the quality of people at Archer, and also the quality of the organizations that we work with. The reality is that we're not doing this alone. We already work with an undoubted world leader in computing, in Big Blue with IBM. That's absolutely fantastic. But we also have very strong relationships with the deep tech facility providers and infrastructure providers and the organizations that we need to be really involved with to develop the technology in these world-class kind of facilities and locations, right? I have to be very clear. This is hardware development. Yeah. It is hardware development. We are building chips. We are developing chips. 50 years ago, one person could probably build a chip. Okay, right? Very clear on that. Today, to build a quantum computing processor, you need more than one person, right? You may not need an army of people. It's not a brute force kind of problem, right? There is some finesse that's involved, and like you said, brain power. But this is where I think Archer is not playing catch up. Definitely not playing catch up, and we are at the forefront of the development of this technology, and our vision really aligns with those of our partners, and it's to see the wide-scale adoption of quantum computing power technology. And our development could be a solution, one of the many potential solutions to enable this vision to come to life. It's not the only, it's not a catch-all, but absolutely exciting to be in a position to provide a solution, and one of very few companies in the world to do so, and very happy to be working with the organizations and people that we get a chance to on a day-to-day basis. It really gets you out of bed in the morning.
Well, it's pretty exciting times for you, but I want to look, we're running out of time, so I'm going to ask you, as I normally do, 3 reasons why people should sit up and take notes. But before I do you think, you mentioned the Big Blue before, IBM, some other companies that you're working with, your market cap's about 250 mil. Do you think that one of the big boys might come in after all this hard work and snap you up?
Well, I'm not aware of anyone trying to snap us up at the moment, but I think it would be remiss of me to not comment on this. So I guess what I would say is it would be reasonable to expect people in the future to realize the value at Archer with our development, with our growth, with our progress, our steady progress, our methodical progress, just the same way as investors have realized the value in Archer over the past few years, right? So I guess that's what I would say to that.
Final question before I get into the final 3, if you like. Everyone knows Intel Inside. Is it going to be Archer Inside in the future? Is that sort of Intel was yesterday's technology, Archer's tomorrow's technology? Is that the way to look at it?
Without infringing on any trademark or lovely anecdote. Yeah, I mean, that sounds pretty catchy. But ultimately, that's our design principles, and our technology allows us to say things like we have the potential to integrate this technology or this chip into mobile devices. I mean, isn't that an exciting opportunity? Isn't it? It really blows my mind every day to think, and this is.
What's it going to do for my mobile phone?
I'm going to show you. Look. You're going to wait for me. I told you I'll come back to this, right? I didn't forget. I swear. You can see this is direct proof. I mean, we are at a point, where we are building devices. It's not pie in the sky anymore. What we have there on that.
Mohammad, what is that?
So what we have here, we recently went to market announcing that we had detected quantum information on a mobile compatible chip, right? So you see that little shiny chip just there, right?
That little square dot?
That little square dot. That is a little chip there that has one transistor on there. It's a high electromobility transistor. All of that is built, developed in a semiconductor foundry, which was just outside Paris. And we worked with our colleagues at the Swiss Institute of Technology, at EPFL, a world-class facility. And that high electromobility transistor, that's something that you would find in your phone. Right.
Isn't it already in my phone?
Well, I mean, that's the premise of your antenna, right? So the antenna in your phone. So we are using, technology that already exists in your devices to detect quantum information. Our qubits are actually on there, right? Our quantum bits, our little bit, there's 1 trillionth of a liter that's on there, right? And we do that under, room temperature conditions, and it's just absolutely phenomenal, the fact that I can actually take this out and show you and then put it back in the instrument, measure it, and see that we still have the quantum information there. I mean, that is absolutely astounding. The point that we are at where we can actually, look at the smile on my face, right? We go from saying we have the potential for this qubit to be integrated into modern day electronics and work at room temperature. And I'm so happy to be able to actually show you, direct proof along our journey. This first, I guess it's the beginning of the end, right? Is it the beginning of the end or the end of the beginning?
The end of the beginning.
The end of the beginning, right? So the end of the beginning, right? So it's absolutely wonderful to be in this position where what you're looking at is that step towards that ultimate vision of integrating a quantum processor in a mobile device.
Why is the quantum processor in a mobile device a game changer for everyday people?
Because then you can start bringing quantum end users and applications to the end user, to the individual, right? And rather than looking at the problems, you're now looking at the individual, and you're saying, how can we design these applications, these end users for an individual? And ultimately that leads into making quantum computing more accessible and fulfilling our vision of that wide-scale adoption of quantum computing.
All right, we've run out of time. I could talk to you for hours, just quietly, because I can see how excited you are. But
you haven't asked me about the 3 things.
I'm just about to.
Oh, okay, there we go. Jump the gun.
I was never going to finish without that, because my audience knows that I like to finish up with a bit of a summary, which is 3 reasons, not 10, just 3, why they should be sitting up and taking notice of ASX code AXE right now.
I'll answer. Okay, so the first reason is Archer is the only ASX-listed company developing a quantum processor. That's the first reason. The second reason is not only are we're the only Australian ASX-listed company doing so, but we're one of very few companies in the world that is doing so. And our patents have been, granted in the largest economies in the world, recently. So that's absolutely wonderful. And third, I would say we have the brain power at Archer to do it, and some of the brightest minds to do it. I think you'd be surprised to find out just how many Aussies are leading the way around the world in quantum computing. I think it's absolutely wonderful.
I think that's absolutely a brilliant way to finish up, because we have been very good. Our brain power down here is good. We do export to the world the way we do things, leading the way in quantum computing. Watch this space, ladies and gentlemen. Archer Materials, ASX code is AXE. Dr. Mohammad Choucair, thank you so much for joining me on Small Caps. Let's get you back in a little while with the next update. Let's not leave it too long.
No problem. Thanks for having me today.